Andrea, thank you so much for coming in. It's delightful to have you here to talk books. You know, yesterday I very quickly reread The Handmaid's Tale because it has been years. And it's really grim. It's a dystopian novel set in an imaginary, very grim universe. Women oppressed, public executions, women not even allowed to read, which is the worst. Since then, the book has been made. There's been a film, but of course it's an incredibly popular television series. Now in 2019, the sequel. Was the sequel sparked by the television series on Atwood's part?
Well, Margaret Atwood said that the book actually came before the series. It's only been released now, but she started writing it in 2014, 2015, okay. So it's before the television series actually came out. But there is some cross-referencing because, for example, she told the showrunners, please do not kill off Aunt Lydia under any circumstances. And part of the reason for that is because Aunt Lydia is one of the main characters in the Testaments.
Oh, wow. So tell us about the Testaments. Is it very different to The Handmaid's Tale?
It is quite different because the main character, Offred, doesn't really feature in here. This takes place about 15 years after The Handmaid's Tale takes place, and it's about the fall of Gilead, which is the republic, this dystopian republic that the book takes place in. And it has three main characters. The first one is Aunt Lydia. She is writing her last will and testament, and she is confessing all.
Oh, wow.
And you also find out her background. How did she come to be Aunt Lydia? Who was she before Gilead was established? And you find out all of that. It's absolutely fascinating. Then there are two other characters. One of them is Agnes. She's a child of one of the commanders, so she grew up in Gilead. She knows nothing else except for Gilead. And then the final character is Daisy. She's grown up in Canada, so she's grown up free, but they ask her to go into Gilead undercover to take a message there for the resistance.
Now, one of the reviews I read said that the books are very different. Handmaid's Tale versus the Testaments is very different. And Handmaid's Tale, as we know, is extremely grim. It ends on a cliffhanger. We don't actually know what happens to Offred. Are the books very different in your view?
Absolutely. I think the fact that it's about the fall of Gilead, there's a little bit of spark of hope, okay. That things will change. And especially the fact that you have this character of Daisy who's part of the resistance. You find out that, well, yes, there are people who are working to freeing the handmaids and everybody who is part of Gilead. But definitely the style is also quite different, seeing as it's told from three different perspectives, and it's about, for example, Aunt Lydia, her writing.
One of the things that struck me as I was going through The Handmaid's Tale yesterday is that it's still very topical. A lot of issues around climate change, and you were saying to me earlier that climate change is actually something that was quite central to her even back then. And we know that that one of the reasons Gilead arose was to try and correct the wrongs of the previous system, and that so much had been destroyed that the environment was at risk, that fertility rates had dropped sharply because of all the environmental damage. Is climate change a big focus here as well?
Well, Aunt Lydia definitely focuses on it as she tells the tale of how Gilead was established, and the fall of Gilead as well. So there's definitely still that scene or the setting of climate change having destroyed so much of the world. So it's definitely still present, but I think it's not as highlighted as it is in The Handmaid's Tale.
Both books have such incredibly powerful, wonderful female figures, which is a delight to read. But do you think The Testaments is as powerful as The Handmaid's Tale? Will it generate as much discussion in years to come?
I think it will. I think even just for the mere fact that it's a sequel to this book. Margaret Atwood initially said she will never write a sequel. And the reason she decided to write this one is because she decided she's not going to focus on Offred, the main character in The Handmaid's Tale. And that also allows it to work alongside the series. So that, I mean, this takes place in the future, not the same time as the series is taking place. But it means that there can be an overlap and that they won't contradict each other.
So do you think this is going to be a TV series as well?
I don't think so, and I don't think Margaret Atwood intended that. But, I mean, it's very possible that they could use some of the material in the Testaments to go into the series if they wanted to.
Well, I certainly can't wait to dive in. Andrea, you've not just been doing the sort of heavy lifting reading, you've also been having a little bit of fun, something a little more light-hearted, and South African fiction. Sally Andrews, tell me more.
So this is the third book in the Tannie Maria mystery series.
Death on the Limpopo.
Yes.
Sounds fabulous.
So Tannie Maria is a Tannie in her 50s. She lives in the Klein Karoo, and she somehow always gets drawn into these mysteries. I mean, if you think of an older woman who solves murders and crimes, you always, I suppose, think of Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote, but this Tannie is just way funkier. I did speak to Sally Andrew about Tannie Maria and about the book, so let's just have a listen to that.
Sure.
She's very much a Karoo invention, and I live in the Klein Karoo. I've been living there for at least 10 years, and she's a large, plump Tannie, and I don't know where one gets ideas. I mean, there is in the spa in Ladysmith, there's a 2-for-1 idea special every Tuesday, so it could have been one of those that I picked up.
So just describe her a little bit for us. You said that she's a plump Tannie, but what's she like?
She's, as you say, she's not hard-boiled, she's soft-boiled. She's 50-something. She's obsessed with food. She's a really grounded Karoo Tannie with her veldskoene on the ground, and with a love of nature, a love of life, a love of cooking. And she's an agony aunt columnist for the Klein Karoo Gazette. People write in with their problems, and she gives them some advice and a recipe which will help them with their problems. She's a really cool Tannie. I feel like I've come to be good friends with her, and a lot of people I'm now friends with because they're best friends with Tannie Maria, so I've made a lot of friends that way. She's really a grounded, loving, kind, slightly quirky presence to have in your life.
So you've mentioned food, which plays a very big role in the books. As you said, she hands out recipes, but you also have the recipes that they talk about in the book at the back of the book for readers to be able to make. So how do you come up with this food?
Here's the book, and at the end, the last section is at least 15 recipes that are at the end of the book. They're just, when I come across something really delicious, or if there's an exciting family recipe, and I've got piles and piles of books of traditional foods, South African foods, so it's quite an eclectic collection, but the ones that go in the back are only those that I've tested well and are moan out loud delicious.
Moan out loud delicious. And I'm actually looking at the book. Pineapple, butternut cake, roasted figs with honey and nuts, stewed guavas with chili and garlic, and amarilla pot pudding. And oh, what have we here?
Yes, so you just mentioned the pineapple butternut cake. I thought that we've just had some food for thought. Let's have some thought for food and have a slice of Tannie Maria. So this is the pineapple butternut cake. It was baked by one of our senior broadcast producers, Risha Chiba, who's also a food blogger. So she kindly, so she kindly agreed to make some of this for us.
Her food blog is on the board, I think.
Yes,
yes. It's wonderful.
Let's see if I can actually get a piece of this out here.
Oh, it looks so moist and delicious.
Yes,
is that mine?
That is yours.
Fantastic.
So I thought we'd have a little taste of this and just see what it's like. Tannie Maria is quite creative. She makes this cake on the fire. I didn't realize you could actually do something like that. So in the book, they go off camping while she solves this mystery. And one of the things she does is while they're camping, she makes this cake on the fire. So I thought, let's just have a taste and see what it's actually like.
So basically, it's very nice. It's quite moist and spicy. Okay, so you've tasted it now. What's better, the book or the cake?
Well, you've got both. And isn't that fabulous? The fact that you can have both. I'm not much of a baker. That's why I asked Risha to do this for us. But there are other recipes. I mean, that stewed guavas with chili. I'm sure I could manage to do that.
I'm sure you could.
And then while you're doing it, it reminds you of the book. And I actually thought it would be rather fabulous if while you're reading the book, you get to one of the food descriptions and you know what, you pause, you go and make it and eat it while you're reading the book.
You know what I love is that there is so much South African fiction coming through. Really, you walk into exclusive books and you will see so many South African authors writing fiction and non-fiction. It really has blossomed in the last decade or so, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I think, you're very lucky that people like Dion Meyer came forward, and he really popularized crime fiction. I think sort of before him, you had so-called, not great, I don't really love this term, but so-called literary fiction. And some of it was very heavy. And this just brings a little bit of light to the literary scene in South Africa, because there's lots of humor in this book. I mean, you can just imagine a tunny in her 50s, a real tunny, solving murder mysteries. So it's just oodles of fun.
It reminds me a little, in terms of the style, of the, was it Alexander McCall Smith, the #1 ladies detective agency, about that lady in Botswana who would go and solve these wonderful mysteries, and just wonderful reading, feel-good reading.
Absolutely. So you'll be able to get through this pretty quickly. I mean, I know maybe it's a little bit early to mention this, but I mean, we are sort of heading towards the holiday season, and this is the kind of the perfect holiday read if you're looking for something that's fun but interesting and intriguing at the same time.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for coming in, getting me cake, which always fills my heart with joy, and telling me about some wonderful books that are absolutely on my book list. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll chat to you again next week.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. That, of course, is our anchor and book reviewer, Andrea van Wyk, telling us about some wonderful books that you can read. And for something a little more light-hearted, you've also